Okay, YouTube, let's get down to Zaporizhia. But before we do, we got to wrap up Kiev. Last time, Taylor, he was dope boy fresh out on the streets of Kiev with some stolen tramadol. And so after he came back 3 days later, we lost him. I never saw him again. Kenny, Jay, they took his stuff out to him, minus all the military things that we cannibalized. Thank you for the knee pads and the elbow pads. Very much appreciated. And so after that had happened, there was a squad meeting. Remember, there was also that one junkie guy that came over with the ear infection that almost died, but he wasn't part of our squad. He was just an episode that I told you all because it was noteworthy. Things were hectic over in Kiev. And so once we had that meeting, then Jay and our fire team leaders that were left, Matt and Kenny, they started to tell us what had happened, beating around the bush about it. And we had one guy, Bush, youngest guy, big bifocals on, cool guy though, born to kill tattoo on his rib cage, always talking about, I just want to kill some Russians. I just came over here to kill some Russians. Man, I just want to kill some, when are we going to kill some Russians? That's all this guy was talking about. And so once he started to hear about it, he got really upset because he didn't understand why Taylor had gone, and he thought that we were just abandoning him and this and that. And so what happened is Jay, feeling sort of boxed in because some things were brought up, right? It wasn't like I was the only one that was noticing all of the whoring and the drinking. Other people were doing it too, but it was the way he was doing it that was rubbing people the wrong way. And so, you know, Jay eventually, I guess, felt pushed into a corner where he wanted to take a vote of confidence and announce like, okay, well, you know, if anyone else thinks that someone should be lead of the squad besides me, then why don't, you know, take a vote and blah, 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 something like that. And so Bush, you know, he rose his hand, and I looked around the room and I didn't see anyone else raise their hand, but I, of course, didn't think that Jay should be squad leader either. And so then I rose my hand, and Jay immediately like looked over at me like, like, you know, like you too, Tristan, Bodie, you too, Brute. And so, you know, I just told him, I was like, look, Jay, this is nothing personal, man. This is business. I think JT should be squad leader. And then JT, much to his discredit, once again, just comes in, whoa. I haven't lost confidence in Jay. I'm not even sure I want to be squad leader. And I'm just over there like, oh my God, man, like, shut up. Just take the reins because this guy's going to get us killed. You obviously know what you're doing. But nevertheless, he's not about it at that time. And Kenny, who's always, you know, riding coattails for Jay, two's not enough to change it, mate. Just what it is, mate. Sorry, mate. And so, you know, we ended up having that go down. Obviously, the little first stage of rebellion didn't go our way. Jay maintained his spot as squad leader, and the shit show sort of continued moving downhill. Now, this was still in the first week moving into 2, so we had been there for over a week. And while this happened, right, there was another guy, Paul, our armorer, the expert, that was always leading our classes on all these rocket systems, on these machine guns, different, like, all kinds of stuff. Expert, machinist, actually, not just like one of those guys that can spout facts. The dude actually makes weapons. He's an actual machinist. You know what I mean? Like, come on. And Jay, through his poor leadership, pushed Paul to the point where Paul was like, you know what? Screw this. I'm just going to go join the Ukrainians, and I'm not going to follow you anymore. And so Paul left. And so then again, you know, Bush got all upset and other people got upset. People are, you know, strings are getting short because why are we losing Paul now? We lost Taylor. Okay, Taylor like shot himself in the foot. But Paul, why is Paul gone? Paul's only gone because things aren't going the way that they're supposed to be. And now this is really starting to become a detriment. But again, like Kenny and then Matt was like one of those types that he just follows. He will follow right over a cliff. That's the soldier's way with Matt. And then Kenny, you know, he's just like coattails. And so there wasn't anything changing, which wasn't good. But the roommate of Jay, that guy Gary, his name is Gary. He's an American guy, short, squat, dark hair, chin strap beard, very loud, boisterous, drinks a lot. And so he was Jay's roommate, right? He was in there the night right after that guy had the seizure, and I went to tell Jay about it, and then I found all the stuff about Taylor. Gary was right there the whole time in his bed. And so next to them in the other room, because remember, each door in the hallway leads to a foyer, and then inside that foyer there's 3 doors, 2 bedrooms and a shared bathroom. And so in next to the bedroom of Jay and Gary was another bedroom that had 3 guys in it. Mitch, Hogan, 2 Americans, and then this other Serbian, not a Serbian, he was Crete, from Cretan, I guess you'd call him. He was like 65 years old, light as a feather, had no idea what the hell he thought he was doing there. He was trying to get money. He was very poor. His mother was sick, but there was just no way like he was going to do anything. And so Mitch and Hogan, though, with Gary, they were sort of a trio. They came up from Mykolaiv and made it out to Lviv where we were and did the training. They were with a squad of mostly Frenchmen. And then in that 10 days that we had been in Kiev and a bunch of people had come back, like squads had come back with like, sometimes squads didn't come back. And then sometimes squads came back missing like half their guys, and there were all these stories about all these people getting killed and blown up and just like not even getting close to the Russians, and then boom, they're just gone, obliterated by BMTs and things like that. And so that whole squad basically, you know, they all had their excuses, but they all broke away and broke up. And so there was only the four of them left: Gary, Hogan, Mitch, and then this Cretan guy. And because we were down, right now we were down 2 guys, then Jay decided to take these 3 guys on because Gary was Army. I forget what he was in the Army, but he was something Army, and he knew his stuff. You know, he seemed to know his stuff. And Mitch and Hogan, I forget what they were. Hogan was French Foreign Legion, deserter from the French Foreign Legion, and then I forget what Mitch was. But they had both said, maybe Mitch never, I don't think Mitch was ever in the military. Anyway, they both were YPG. They said that they fought with the Peshmerga fighters down in Iraq versus ISIS, and they told all these stories about how they pushed in with those fighters and even were involved with the capture of Raqqa, which was like the de facto capital of the self-proclaimed caliphate that was ISIS, if you know anything about it. And so, you know, they seemed to know their stuff, these 3 guys, and we were down, and so Jay decided to take these guys on, and so our squad was sort of built back up to full strength or almost full strength. A full strength squad is 13 guys. I'm not going to try and count it right now on video, but I think we got 12. Maybe we already have 13. But there was this other guy, a Swedish guy named Rich. Really, like, you can't believe this guy is at war. He's like so soft-spoken, very effeminate, very intellectual, very cerebral, very clean, but with brown teeth, you know. And by that I mean like always washes his hands after everything, very just like doesn't like to be dirty, and just not a very aggressive kind of guy. But he had been with a squad down in Mykolaiv. He was with that same squad with the guy that had the OD on the morphine and the tramadol. That guy was in his squad, and apparently a shit show had happened down there where they were, and he had heard that our squad had a bunch of good guys and that we actually did training and we had a lot of experience, which compared to everyone else that I saw was very true. At no point did I want to be in another squad than mine, even with Jay leading it, right? Because if you saw the other squads, you would understand why. And so we got this guy, Rich, right? That's what we called him, Rich. And he was a vegetarian. He was a vegetarian, right? Vegetarian over here in war, refuses to eat meat, walking around with cans of peaches. Would you like, I can't even do his accent. Would you like some peaches? Would you like some peaches, Bodie? You know, just like so strange, but really likable, very likable guy. I really like Rich. And got to give a shout out to Rich, right? He's seriously, he's done work. Guy's been in trench warfare twice, out of action from wounds sustained in actual combat. So even though he's like this, like seems like a flower boy, this guy is hard. He is rock. So much love, Rich. He's still out there. He's still out there even after those 2 catastrophic injuries, still coming back, fighting for Ukraine. So much love to Rich. But yeah, so we took Rich. And Jay was very rude, you know. Jay, man, he was just the way, walking with his cock out all the time, especially to the new guys, especially to Rich, right? Rich was sort of like everyone's punchline, not mine. I was always really nice to Rich, but again, it's because he took it, you know, he took it. He was just very soft-spoken. Does your mom let you talk like that, Rich? Oh, no, she'd be very upset. You're like that kind of guy, right? Like, just like very funny. And so anyway, now we had this full squad, you know, besides obviously losing Paul. And that first week was now 2 weeks, and people were just over it because we were only supposed to be in Kiev for a week. And now it was settled into a routine of just like no routine. It was sort of just like a bunch of guys living in Kiev during a war. Like, you just did what you wanted, except we all had to come back at night. Although sometimes they didn't. They didn't even come back at night. You know, again, I had Ashley. So my heart was broken, and I just didn't have it in me to try and use Tinder to you know, talk to a woman or even to pay for a woman. It just wasn't in me. But a lot of people did, and so they would spend the night and, or, you know, go out and The clubs weren't open past 11, but people would go out. It was like, what are we doing here? A lot of people started talking about going home because it seemed like we weren't going to go anywhere. And then when we finally did get the orders that we were going to go somewhere, so like the next morning we were supposed to leave, and then we got called off. And we were like, why? What is going on? And the reason is because the Ukrainian officer, the command that we were supposed to go and fight under, he got killed. And so, they couldn't just send us with anyone, because the only person that spoke Russian, not even Ukrainian, was Dom. And none of the rest of us, we were all from England, Canada, or the U.S., so we only spoke English. And so they had to find Ukrainian commands that actually could speak English so that we wouldn't just get ourselves killed or get other people killed. And that wasn't so easy. And so we lost that first opportunity because our commanding officer got killed. And then we ended up getting a second opportunity. And that was the one that finally took us out of Kiev. But before I go any further, I must say the only reason I was in Kiev, the only reason I was in Ukraine, that I can tell you these stories about these men, about these actions, about just everything, is because I was trying to bring, and am right now, trying to bring attention to Ashley West Eisen. So please subscribe. It's the easiest way to help save a life. All you have to do is subscribe. It's a numbers game. With enough people, Ashley will get heard by the world, and this monstrosity will come to an end. Everything I have done, everything I do, is to get Ashley out of Thai prison. So please subscribe, share with your friends, get them to subscribe. I think this content is really unique. There's probably not a lot of other people that can provide it, and if it is sort of like not super unique, then check out my other podcast, because maybe international dark web drug trafficking. I'm pretty sure there's not a lot of channels that can offer that sort of content, and it all to bring awareness and publicity to Ashley West Eisen. So please subscribe and like and share and all of that. I really appreciate it, and so does Ashley. And so with that being said, 2 nights before we got shipped off, finally leaving Kiev, then Colonel Sasha, because what would happen is, one more tangent, weapons. You have to think, I was there right when the war was starting, and all these weapons were coming in from all over the world, flooding in, and we were in this apartment building, and there would just be trucks filled with rockets and machine guns and ammunition and all sorts of other gear, Kevlar, just whatever, coming in and being put into this room, this big room in the bottom of our building, right, the armory room. And then just as often there would be cars coming in off the street. I'm talking like little beat up Toyota Camrys coming in off the street with empty trunks, and then 20 minutes later they're leaving with a trunk full of weaponry, and you don't know where they're going. Maybe they're taking deliveries to the front line, maybe they're not, I don't know. But there was a lot of that sort of thing going on, where you were just like, man, I bet there are people making a killing right now because there is just so much stockpile and not enough oversight. But what had happened was Colonel Sasha apparently got an order for some AK-74s, and he wasn't able to fill it all because there wasn't enough in the armory. And so he ended up going around, sending people around, asking if anyone had AKs. And then when the person came to our room, like, right, Dom and I's room, came to our room and asked, like, hey, do any of you guys have AKs? And Dom and I were like, yeah, Dom. And Dom's like, he growls. That's what Dom does. He growls. Yeah, man. And he's like, Colonel Sasha wants the AKs to be taken down seriously, blah, 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 blah. Basically, like, he wants to take our AKs. And Dom's like, Corva, fuck, man. Like, and I'm like, what? I'm like, what do you mean he wants to take our rifles? He's like, Colonel Sasha wants to take, these AKs, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, we literally have had these AKs since we got here. We have gone to the firing range. We sighted them. We have been doing shooting drills with them. We've taken them apart, putting them back together, painted them, slept with them. Like, these are our rifles, man. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, look, I'm just the messenger. You got to go talk to Colonel Sasha, blah, blah, blah. And so, Dom and I are like, okay, let's go talk to Colonel Dom. Dom, I didn't have to even fire him up. Dom was fired up. He was like, this fucking guy take my AK. What do you want with my AK? And so we go downstairs, and again, Colonel Sasha is Polish, and Dom is Polish. So I didn't even say anything. I'm just standing behind Dom, like, motivational support. Like, yeah, get him, Dom. Because Dom's just like, blah, 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 blah. And again, Dom is not someone to be played with. Dom is a straight killer. And so Colonel Sasha, he's looking at Dom, and I'm standing right behind Dom. I'm like, lip out far as it could go, like Bubba Gump. What, And so finally, Colonel Sasha backed down. And we kept our AKs. But there's other people. There was this one American, this goofy guy who was in our squad. He didn't keep his because he didn't have Dom with him. And so he had to give his AK up, right? Crazy, right? So he had to give his AK up. And so now he had like 700 rounds, 800 rounds of extra 7.62 ammunition. And he didn't have any use for it. And so I was like, hey man, like I'm always looking for ammo. I'm always looking for ammo, tactical gear, and first aid equipment that I don't already have a buku of. And so, you know, he told me he had that. I was like, yeah, I'll take that. Like, let me get it. And so he brought it to us in our room, and Dom and I had already had a can, 1,000. We already had 1,000 rounds of 7.62. So now we had close to 2,000 rounds of 7.62 ammunition. Plus what we already had in our magazines. And I just need to go into this as well. I promise we're about to go, but it's certainly relevant. The people that had the Brins or the FKMs, whatever they're called, they would usually carry 8 magazines on them, right? I don't know why. That's what they carry. They carried 8 magazines. JT, Matt, Kenny, Mitch, Hogan, they all carried 8 magazines. 7 on them and 1 for their rifle. Okay, so they had 8. Now Dom carried 11 magazines, right? Dom carried 10 magazines on him, and then he carried 1 in his rifle. Okay, now me, right, I carried 13 magazines. I had 12 that I kept on me, and I had 1 in my rifle. And 7.62 round ammunition, if you're not aware, it's 20% heavier than 5.62 round ammunition. So significantly more weight. Now I must say this about Dom as well. Dom and I, okay, we ran at the same speed. Here's why. Dom did not wear body armor. I'll say that again. Dom did not wear body armor, man. This guy did not wear body armor. He was just Dom, and he was just out there, okay? Dom was just out there like it was paintball. You know, he didn't have no body armor on, man. I'm telling you, he didn't even wear a helmet. This guy, Dom, God, I hope, man, Dom, much love, Dom. Now me, okay, I'm not Dom, right? So I have my Kevlar, and it's got the camouflage with the netting around it, and then I got sticks and everything coming out. Like I read the SOPs. I'm like conceal. And my tactical vest and armor that they gave me in Lviv from the Marine Corps, level 4 plates. All of them. I kept all of them in. Front, back, side plates. I kept the Teflon, it's not like the plate armor, but another type of armor around the neck, the groin protector. I had all that on. So Dom and I, because of that, we were like the same speed, which was good, because when obviously like battle rushing, buddy rushing, when we actually had to do stuff, it was very helpful because we were like the same speed. But it was just funny because I was weighed down so much with so much ammunition and so much armor, and Dom just had none of it, but he was just so heavy and so big because he was such a massive guy. So I thought that was funny. But yeah, we kept our AKs. And then the next day, we finally went down at sunrise, and we were ordered to hop into 2 vans, right? 2 big vans, and we were going to head down. It was time for us to go, man. We were leaving Kiev. We signed all our contracts. We had everything. We didn't have bank accounts, but you know, whatever. I wasn't worried about that anyway, but a lot of guys were. They were worried about money, but I didn't have those problems. I had money. And so anyway, once we got into the vans, we started to head down. It was like an 8-hour drive, whole time, right? I'm just listening to Mitch and Hogan tell war stories about when they were in Syria fighting the ISIS and machine gunning dudes and like all this crazy stuff, right? Listening to Mitch and Hogan. No reason not to trust them. And Nibs and Matt, you know, they're talking. Everyone's just conversating except Dom. Dom never talks. Dom just answers. Dom answers questions with like 2 or 3 words. And myself, I don't really talk much. Once in a while, I'll be in the mood to talk. But otherwise, I usually just think. You know, I just sort of listen. I listen to everyone else. And so we were driving for a long time. Again, we didn't just drive straight shot. And so straight shot. One of the funny things was we would stop. We probably stopped 3 or 4 times. And every time we would stop, it would be at a gas station. And so you have to think, we're driving from Kiev to Zaporizhia. And if you look on a map, there were whole like 2-hour stretches where we had no internet. I mean, we were in the country, son. And so we would stop at these stores in the middle of nowhere. And suddenly, you know, there'd be a store with like 5 or 6 local Ukrainians inside, 1 or 2 that work for the shop, and then the rest are customers or drinking a coffee or smoking a cigarette, just talking in Ukrainian, you know, Slavic. And so then suddenly, like, we pull up and we get out of the vans like just G.I. Joe, right? And start rolling up. Everyone's talking, laughing in English, boisterous in English, coming in, filling up the doorway. You know, y'all got some cheeseburger, hot dogs, like this, that. And these people are just looking at us slack-jawed, just like, Like we came from the moon, man. Right? Like they can't believe it. And they don't speak any English. And luckily we have Dom, and that Israeli guy who speaks English, Hebrew, and Ukrainian or Russian. He was with us too. He was gonna go. He was joining another squad that was already down where we were going, but he was with us too. And so they were able to help. But it was funny. It was just funny to be in there because those people, the way they reacted whenever we just came in, they were just like, could not believe it. And so anyway, once we got down to Zaporizhia, big city. You start coming in, you feel like, yeah, this is Soviet made, huge, megalithic, okay, concrete structures, very impressive. Like this dam with these different levees. It was just like, wow. And the elevations, the differences in elevations, it was very impressive when we came to that, especially when you pass through hours of just beautiful farmland. Not so beautiful actually at that time because it wasn't spring yet and most of the ground was fallow and there was just sprouts coming up and a lot of the trees still didn't have leaves. They were just budding. It was just the beginning, right? So, but still, it was an impressive city. But we didn't stop there. We kept driving straight through Zaporizhia, looking at everything. Didn't seem like it was at war. Did not feel like we were in a war place at all. There were a couple places where there were some sandbags and checkpoints set up where you saw people walking around in military fatigues, but otherwise, straight up any civilian city. People walking around, normal business, every shop's open, strollers with the kids inside and the moms pushing them. It was just like a normal everyday thing. And so we kept moving through, kept driving through Zaporizhia for another close to an hour, probably 45 minutes, until suddenly we were on this road, and next to us on the right side was a railroad track, and then on the other side was the other road going in the opposite direction. So it was like a 2-lane road, but it was separated by a railroad track. And once we had gotten to this little, it wasn't even a town. It didn't seem like a town. It just seemed like we were driving through. The tallest structure that you could see was the stupa, the church, the golden domes of the church. But we just pulled off. We just suddenly pulled off this 2-lane road onto this little residential street. And so we were like, oh God, like, you know, everyone's like, oh, you know, what's up? Where are we gonna go? And so we're driving down this little residential street, little tiny cinder block houses. Every single one had some land, and all of them, the land was being cultivated. If nothing else, they had flowers, tulips. A lot of them had tulips, very pretty. But again, at this time, they weren't blooming yet. And so, you know, driving down this little residential street, very poor but tidy. And then suddenly we get down and we see this blue gate that's open, and there's armed guards standing at this blue gate that's open. And so as soon as we drive in, the armed guards just shut the gate behind us immediately, and we're inside this compound. And it's very well maintained. It looks new. We're not really sure what it is, but it's immaculately kept. The walkways, there's like no weeds anywhere. All of the plants, all of the flowers, all of the trees, everything has just been really well kept, and it looks like people wash it weekly. Very, very nice. And so we're all like, what is this? Like, where are we? And we pull into the back. Of this place, gravel road, building right next to us. And when we got out, it was like a kitchen, right? Because you could see when you looked in through that door, there were like the big giant industrial sized pots and everything that was for like a big enterprise. And so we started to take the gear, get it inside the building quickly, moving quick. And we start walking in. Mitch and Hogan, they're looking around. There's all these pictures on the wall in crayon and like watercolors and stuff that looks like little kids. And so we think it's a school. And there's signs, again, like kiddie signs, but they're all in Ukrainian or Russian. And so we don't know what they say until Dom comes in and tells us that we're actually at an orphanage. So, okay, like that's something. So that's where we ended up. We were at this orphanage down past Zaporizhia. And we went into the cafeteria after we got everything in the hallway. There was these other guards that were already there. There was another squad that was already there. We didn't know at the time, but they were just these big guys that were there with guns. And so, you know, we were like, okay, like, yeah, what's up? And we went into the cafeteria, and they had lunch for us. All these Ukrainian women, they started bringing out these plates with really fresh food, really fresh potatoes, soup, chicken, rice, very good. Zeb, always the horn dog. Yeah, oh boy, man, no, I'm gonna get, you know, he's always thinking about getting him some Ukrainian, and so he was quite pleased to see all the Ukrainian women there. But we were eating inside of there ourselves until Jay came back like 10 minutes in. Because obviously when he got there, he went straight up to see the Ukrainian command, and he started to tell us, you know, he was like, all right guys, I met our commander. He's a Ukrainian guy named Vitaly. We're going to have a meeting with him upstairs in 15 minutes, and he's going to give us the rundown of the situation, and we're going to go from there. And so, you know, everyone's when we had been in Kiev almost for 3 weeks, there were a lot of people, again, that were on the verge of going home. And so now that we had gotten back there, it was really a good shot sort of in everyone's arm. Everyone was feeling motivated. Everyone was feeling like happy to be there, ready to see what came next. And so, you know, we ate our food and went upstairs to wait and see what was going to come. And we were inside this dance studio, actually. Very pretty, very cute. It was lined with glass, and it had the little rails for, I suppose, the girls to do their ballerina poses and things like that. It was very precious. And so we were up there waiting for the Ukrainians to come inside. And sure enough, like 5 minutes within, we heard the footsteps, and three Ukrainians came in. Two stepped forward, one stood back. The one that stood back looked like the roughest one, but anyway, the two that stood forward, one was tall, again, chin strap beard, dark, sort of like a yellowish skin, you know, like a sort of a mix of Asiatic and Caucasian color skin. And then the guy standing next to him was very pale, shortest guy there, even shorter than Hogan. Hogan was shorter than Gary. Gary was short. Mitch was like my size. Mitch was from Tennessee, country boy, had a gap between his teeth. Hogan, again, short, squat, sort of heavy, long brown hair, a little bit of a Napoleon complex. And so Vitaly, he was, you know, your prototypical sort of big Ukrainian, and Andre was very small, but spoke good English, and we later found out had been to Camp Pendleton, California to do training with the Marine Corps Recon, so we had a lot of respect for him. We had a lot of respect for both of them. And so, yeah, Vitaly came in. What's up, guys? That's how he was. He was always really optimistic, really happy. You know, my name is Captain Vitaly. He started going through. Again, I'm really bad at accents, but he started going through why we were there, who he was, and he would get caught up. Right? He had he was telling us that there was always a guard duty, 24/7. There was someone that had to be walking the grounds, weapon cocked, loaded, radio, and he said, you know, he'd be like, have to walk around the stuka, blah, 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 and then he'd say over to Andre, you know, like what is the word for, and then Andre would laugh and say, perimeter, and then Vitaly would be like, the perimeter, you know, continue like that. So it was funny, like Andre wasn't there to be Vitaly's fill in the English blank, although that he did that. Andre was the intelligence guy. Andre's job was intelligence. Vitaly was operations. Vitaly was who led us in the field when we went. Much love to Vitaly. Andre never left the base, which is not hating on Andre at all. Andre's probably better trained, certainly, than Vitaly was. But Andre's specialty, Andre had better skills, and his skills were the intelligence of our operations. And so they laid out this big map down on the floor, right? And they started to go through it. And I'll just sort of rehash what he said, not in his accent, though, because it would just be silly. So, you know, basically we're 15 miles from the front right now. Our position is 15 miles from the forward Russian positions, okay? We are in an orphanage, obviously, that doesn't have any kids here. We are going to be operating out of this area, and he pointed to a little place on the map, which is where we're going to go next episode, which was 3 kilometers from the front line. And our target was a Russian village by the name of Doroshenka. Okay, it's a Ukrainian village under Russian occupation, not currently, but it was at the time, and it was called Doroshenka. And so our job basically was going to be to take Doroshenka. And so he was letting us know that because we were so close to the front lines, there were a lot of rules, right? Obviously, there's no pictures or social media. The internet that we had there was provided by Starlink, so much love to Elon Musk, who was providing the internet there, but we all had to use VPNs whenever we were on it because, to mask our location. We all had Ukrainian SIM cards, of course. And whenever we were outside, we had to stay under tree cover, could not be in groups bigger than 3 or 4. There was a running track out back, and we were allowed to use that, but only one at a time and only in civilian clothing, because there were a lot of saboteurs and a lot of individuals with sympathies, Russian sympathizers that were in the area that had already flown drone flights over, were trying to sort of surveil to see if this orphanage was being used for something, because we were in range of artillery and certainly missile strikes. And if the Russians knew that there was an orphanage that was filled with like 50 foreigners, they would certainly have targeted that. And so it was really made clear the rules as far as all that was concerned. Other rules, blackout. So every single window in a room that was occupied had a heavy curtain over it, and at nighttime, sundown, whoever was on fire watch would walk around all the buildings, and even a sliver of light that would get radioed in and reported, and then we'd have to go to that room wherever it was in the building and fix it until there was no light coming out. So it was completely blacked out. So at nighttime there was no light inside. And other than that, it was just, sort of stay inside and be sensible. And while you're outside, look for drones and, of course, radio in anything. While I was there, my first or second night on fire watch, there was a missile strike into the town that was nearby that was so strong that it literally shook the building and all the windows. I thought it was going to break the windows. It was like 4:30 in the morning, and I just got on watch 15 minutes or 20 minutes before, and then it's just like, boom, this pressure wave. And you heard the explosion. And so we were close into it at this orphanage that had a really big arsenal downstairs next to the TV room, filled with so much rockets and ammunition. I have pictures of it, really cool. And so these were our commanders, Vitaly and Andre, and then Jay was going to be underneath them, and we, of course, were who ran it and conducted the missions. And Jay asked them when we were going to be going out, and Andre and Vitaly told us that they were going to take Jay and some of the fire team leaders out for the first few days to see reconnaissance the area that we were going to be working in, and then after that we were all going to start going out as a squad and doing some operations out there. And so we broke up from that. They put the maps up. We went into the room, right? So we were on the second floor on the left side, and there was a room that had 13 beds in it, and it used to house orphans, bless their sweet little souls, but now it would house us. And so we each chose a rack. Dom at the far end, I was next to Dom, Rich was next to me, Steve was next to him, Kenny was at the front, and then on the other side, you had JT and Mitch, and then Hogan, and Nibs, Matt, Bush, Jay, right? So everyone, we were just like in there, right? This one room, everyone was in there now. And so we settled in, and we met the squad that was on the other wing. So there was another wing of the building, and on the other wing there was another squad called Sparta Group. And so we met them. Big guy, this big guy from Spain with the call sign Danger, right? So I'm Bodie, Dom, Nibs, JT. This guy was Danger. We met a bunch of them, and they told us that they weren't going on missions so much right now because the missions that they went on, they had really done bad and they had lost a lot of guys. And so we were, we were like, okay. But we felt confident because we knew our guys knew our stuff. We had a lot of training. And so, we didn't really feel like that was too bad to hear, but it was just interesting to listen. And so we heard their stories and tried to use that and emphasize that. And we did our training, and we started to settle into the orphanage. It was like a daily routine. They had breakfast in the morning, lunch, dinner, and throughout the day we would do different kinds of trainings. We would work out. I would work out a lot. They had showers downstairs in this basement area that felt like that movie Hostel, like an Eastern European horror scene. And they were super cold. You only could shower warm water whenever the women were like 30 minutes before a meal, because then whatever was making the food hot, there was still water in the tanks for the showers. And yeah, it was actually really nice, to be honest with you. It was actually really nice and comfortable in this orphanage. The women took wonderful care of us. The food was super fresh. They went behind us everywhere. They cleaned everything. They were super sweet. They were super nice. It was very pleasant. And we weren't allowed to go into town by ourselves. There was a town you could walk into, like 15 or 20 minutes walk. Although I did go sometimes. I would go with other people. But there was a danger because they said, of kidnappings and stuff. They would try and, the Russians would try and kidnap the foreigners and then hold for ransom or give them to the Russians, all this stuff. But, we would always take our pistols and stuff with us anyway, so we didn't really worry about it. But we just always made sure we never went alone. And, yeah, we started to settle into this orphanage about an hour outside of Zaporizhia. And that is where we spent 4 or 5 days, 3 or 4, maybe 5 days, until we went on our first mission. Before we went, Jay, Kenny, and Dom, because Dom speaks Russian, right? They went, and Matt also went on one, and they reconnaissance the area. They came back, they gave us the info, they gave us the 411, Everyone was ready to go. We had all been there, been, chomping at the bit. And so it was finally time for us to go and do some stuff. And so if I haven't said already, make sure you subscribe, Ashley Westeisen. But I'm going to finish with Dom, Kenny, and Jay. They went the night before they went the night before we did. They went before with Vitaly and some other guys. I haven't introduced, no, George doesn't come in yet. With Vitaly and some other guys to get things ready for us, to get things ready for our squad to move in to where we were going. Where we were going was crazy. And so that's what they went. And then the next day, Vitaly came back and he called a meeting. And at the time, because Matt was left, Matt was in charge of our squad. And then Mitch was sort of looked at as the next fire team leader because of all the experience that he said he had and whatnot. And so we had this meeting. Vitaly called us up into the dance studio again, and Andre came in, and Vitaly had this tablet, really cool tablet that had up-to-date enemy lines, enemy troops, allied troops, like a video game, really, where you could just see different shapes, meant different types of units, activating real time, put the map back on the ground. And he came in, he said, "You guys ready to go?" He didn't say kill some Russians. That's what Bush always said. But he was like, "Tonight we're going to go kill some Russians," right? And Bush was like, "Hell yeah!" And everyone was really stoked about it. And he laid it out for us. And Vitaly, with Andre in there, basically said that in a few hours' time, we were going to get loaded up. We were going to be driven out to this place on this map. Again, it was about 3 kilometers from Doroshenka. I don't remember the name, but it's 3 miles north of Doroshenka, to a place that had been taken over by the Ukrainian Foreign Legion. We were going to be driven there, dropped off. Jay and them had already gotten us like a spot set up. And that night we were going to attack some Russian positions and push them out. And the Ukrainians were supposed to support us. I'm sort of paraphrasing because I'm going to go into this a lot more next time, but that's where we're at. So I'm going to leave off there. Make sure you subscribe. Free Ashley. Next time we will get into the grain silo, and we'll get into some real missions. Okay, so free Ashley.